To configure Vault AWS Auth, you need to follow these steps. First, understand the key concepts involved in Vault AWS Authentication. Vault is a secrets management tool that provides secure access to sensitive data, and AWS Auth is a method of authenticating with Vault using AWS credentials. Start by configuring the AWS Auth backend in Vault. This involves enabling the AWS Auth backend and configuring the AWS credentials that Vault will use to authenticate with AWS. Next, configure the AWS Auth backend to use the desired authentication methods such as IAM roles or EC2 instance profiles. Once the AWS Auth backend is configured, you need to configure the auth method. This involves specifying the type of authentication method to use, such as login or authentication, and the AWS credentials to use for authentication. You also need to configure the bound roles and policies to specify which AWS roles and policies are allowed to authenticate with Vault. After configuring the AWS Auth backend and auth method, you need to test the configuration. This involves attempting to authenticate with Vault using the configured AWS credentials and verifying that the authentication is successful. You should also test that the bound roles and policies are working as expected. Best practices for Vault AWS Auth include using IAM roles instead of access keys and regularly rotating AWS credentials. You should also limit the permissions of the AWS credentials used for Vault authentication to the minimum required for authentication. Additionally, you should monitor Vault logs for any authentication errors or issues and regularly review and update the AWS Auth configuration to ensure it remains secure and up to date. In summary, configuring Vault AWS Auth involves enabling and configuring the AWS Auth backend and auth method, testing the configuration, and following best practices for security and maintenance. By following these steps, you can securely authenticate with Vault using AWS credentials and manage access to sensitive data.